Coming up today, the chief nuclear envoys of South Korea, the United States and Japan are holding trilateral talks in Seoul as they seek ways to get North Korea back to multilateral discussions on the regime's denuclearization. More loans build up on South Korea's massive household debt mountain, with families borrowing twice as much in April as they did in March. Plus, as a fifth case of Middle East Respiratory Syndrome is confirmed in Korea, the government assures the public there's next to no chance of the virus spreading beyond those exposed to the primary infection. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Wednesday, the 27th of May. You're tuned in to our midday newscast right here on Arirang TV. Thanks as always for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. And we start with the talks that are happening right now in Seoul between the chief nuclear envoys from South Korea, the United States and Japan, as they seek ways to kickstart the long-stalled six-party talks on North Korea's denuclearization. For more, we have our Hwang Sang-hee on the line. So, Sang-hee, have the three officials made much progress?
Hi, Mark. The talks are still underway, so we don't have much details on the results yet. But opening today's talk, South Korea's chief nuclear negotiator Park Geunhye noted the timeliness of the meeting. He said the talks come amid heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula due to North Korea's continued advancement of its nuclear and missile programs, and added that Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo will cooperate closely against North Korean threats. Now, Pyongyang has recently claimed progress in its nuclear program and tested a submarine-launched ballistic missile. There is also increased uncertainty surrounding the regime following reports that several senior officials have been removed. The South Korean envoy said the three parties will also work with China and Russia for the ultimate goal of denuclearizing North Korea. In fact, Pang and his American counterpart, Sang Kim, will fly to Beijing tomorrow to meet China's chief nuclear negotiator, Wei. Now, Japanese envoy Junichi Ihara reportedly met with Wu before his visit to Seoul, and this back-to-back diplomacy with China is a sign of close cooperation with Beijing on the issue. In about half an hour from now, each official will speak to the press on the outcome of the meeting, so I'll have more details on today's talks in our later newscast. This has been Hwang Sang-hee reporting live from Lotte Hotel in Seoul.
Now, a former World Bank official says North Korea could advance its regional integration by joining the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or AIIB. In an article on US-based website 38 North this week, former World Bank official Bradley O. Babson said the AIIB would serve as a new mechanism for engaging North Korea by helping the communist country's infrastructure development projects. He said the economic cooperation could ultimately strengthen stability on the Korean peninsula and security in Northeast Asia. Babson added in his article that North Korea was reportedly turned down when it made informal inquiries about joining the multilateral mechanism, as it could not provide detailed information about its economic and financial status. He suggested first giving the North an observer status to the AIIB to kickstart a gradual process of engagement. The United States is urging North Korea to refrain from unnecessarily upping tensions on the Korean peninsula by building a military facility on an island near its maritime border with the South. In an interview with Voice of America on Wednesday, a State Department official said the U.S. has the responsibility and the obligation to protect South Korea and international security. The remarks come after the South Korean military reported that North Korea was planning to install multiple rocket launchers on Galdo Island, which sits roughly 4.5 kilometers from South Korea's Yeonpyeong-do Island, and the area has often been a source of conflict between the two Koreas. In November 2010, North Korea shelled Yeonpyeong-do Island, killing 2 Marines and 2 civilians. Now, another case of Middle East Respiratory Syndrome has been confirmed in Korea. This now lifts the total number of patients to 5. Authorities say the disease is very unlikely to spread nationwide, as the first person to contract the virus is the primary source of infection for all of the cases. Han Dan reports.
The fifth person to contract the disease is the doctor who treated the first patient. After developing a high fever and diarrhea, he was taken to an isolation ward for testing on Tuesday, where he was confirmed positive for the virus. This is the fifth MERS case in Korea in 7 days, since the first was confirmed last Wednesday. It may seem like the virus is spreading fast, but the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the possibility of the rare disease spreading to other parts of the nation is very low.
That's because the primary source of infection for all the confirmed cases is one person, the first patient. There has been no secondary or tertiary infection.
Authorities have quarantined the doctor's family members in their homes while maintaining the home quarantine for the roughly 60 people who have had any kind of contact with the first 4 patients.
In order to enhance the efficiency of the home quarantine, we have deployed more welfare workers to watch over them.
The CDC has also lowered the threshold temperature from 38 degrees Celsius to 37.5 when diagnosing if a patient has a fever. It'll also run DNA tests, which is the main diagnostic test for the virus for anyone who asks for it. Authorities have been grilled over their failure to immediately quarantine the 4th patient when she asked for testing because she had a high fever. The CDC also assured the public that the MERS virus cannot be passed on to others during the incubation period, which is from 2 to 14 days at the longest. Han Daeun, Arirang News.
Now, the country's fast-rising household debt burden has set yet another record high in April, with the amount of money borrowed that month twice that borrowed in March. The reason? Well, a rise in housing transactions during the spring moving season. Shin Se-min reports.
The country's household debt has hit another record high. The Financial Supervisory Service said Wednesday that the amount of outstanding household debt in repayment at the end of last month was up by $7.9 billion from the previous month. The total amount of outstanding debt was well over $1.16 trillion last month, up 1.2% from the month before. The increase is the second in 2 months and the biggest in more than 9 years. The financial watchdog attributes the debt increase to the country's record low interest rate of 1.75% and spring moving season, which caused a jump in housing transactions. Koreans typically move in March, April, and May when the weather isn't too hot or too cold. Experts say the growing household debt burden is cause for concern as the borrowing trend is likely to continue for some time. They say that without more borrowing programs to help contain household debt, the Korean economy could suffer. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
President Park Geunhye is urging Korea's small and medium-sized firms to actively take part in the government's efforts to create more high-quality jobs. At an annual meeting with businessmen representing SMEs, she was expected to ask that they make use of overseas networks established by conglomerates participating in the government's innovation centres for job creation. President Park also planned to talk about SMEs taking advantage of her deregulation drive, which aims to foster Korea's service sector, and her diplomatic efforts to assist overseas launching of SMEs' business operations. Government officials and the businessmen had an opportunity to discuss ways to reduce difficulties Korean firms face abroad. The heads of the SMEs and startups also vowed to create 130,000 new jobs over the next 12 months. The leaders and chief policymakers of Korea's rival political parties will meet this afternoon in an attempt to thrash out the remaining details of a bill to reform the nation's deficit-ridden pension system. If everything goes to plan, the National Assembly will vote on it on Thursday. But, as our Ji Myung-gil reports, there's still a big hurdle the two sides need to get over.
Korea's ruling Century Party and main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy are preparing to put the pension reform bill to a final vote at Thursday's plenary session. But the NPD could yet throw a spanner in the works. The party says it has a new condition for passing the bill, the removal of Health and Welfare Minister Moon Hyung-pyo. The opposition claims Moon would impede future bipartisan consultations on reforming the National Pension Service. The minister opposes raising national pension payouts to 50% of pre-retirement income from the current 40%, as the increase would put even further strain on the nation's finances. The ruling party is reluctant to consider the opposition's demand to dismiss the minister and has expressed its frustration with the MPAD attaching new conditions on top of agreements the parties have already made. However, if the pension reform bill is passed on Thursday, further discussions to strengthen the National Pension Service will be held within a newly created social body. Last-minute disagreements on the pension bill delayed a full session at the National Assembly, canceling voting on a series of urgent economy-related bills last month. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Now, the dates are finalized. President Park Geunhye will visit the United States from June 14th to the 18th on the invitation of US President Barack Obama. Her office says the two leaders will meet for summit talks on June 16th in Washington, after which President Park will travel to Houston, Texas for 2 days before returning back to Seoul. Now, during their summit, the leaders will reaffirm their alliance in actively responding to a changing security situation on the Korean Peninsula and in Northeast Asia, as well as addressing other global issues. President Park's upcoming trip comes after U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice earlier this year announced Washington's plans to invite leaders from Korea, China, Japan and Indonesia to further enhance U.S. ties with Asia. It will be President Park's second official visit to the U.S. since taking office in 2013. And President Park has been named the 11th most powerful woman in the world on Forbes magazine's annual list of the world's 100 most powerful women. The magazine said President Park, who was ranked 46th last year, oversees the world's 14th largest economy, which borders a nuclear-armed North Korea. The magazine added, however, that both her approval ratings and the economy have continued on a rather downward trend. On the list published Tuesday, President Park was ranked one notch below US First Lady Michelle Obama and one above talk show host Oprah Winfrey. German Chancellor Angela Merkel topped the list for a fifth straight year, followed closely by Hillary Clinton. New to the list is Lee Boo-jin, the eldest daughter of Samsung Group chairman Park Geunhye. She ranked in 100th. This year marks half a century of diplomatic ties between Korea and Japan, and their economic relationship has improved greatly in recent decades. But recently, trade between the two countries has started to drop off a bit. However, both sides have recognized the slump and are doing their best to try and arrest it. Kwon So-ah reports.
There's no question that Japan is one of Korea's major economic partners, and vice versa. Korea used to import more goods from Japan than any other nation, with trade volume jumping over 400-fold since the two countries established diplomatic ties in 1965. But the trade climate has cooled recently. Bilateral trade dropped by 14% in the first quarter of this year, and 2014 marked the third consecutive year that Korea and Japan posted negative growth in bilateral trade. But there seems to be consensus from both sides that the economic partnership must be strengthened. Progress could be seen at recent rounds of ministerial meetings. Korea and Japan's tourism, finance, and trade ministers have all held face-to-face meetings this month. Finance Minister Park Geunhye and his Japanese counterpart Taro Aso issued a joint statement promising cooperation on their macroeconomy and fiscal policies.
The meeting was arranged to find an opportunity for economic issues to be solved separately from historical issues.
Choi tried to avoid touchy issues, but Korea's Trade Minister Yoon Sang-jik was more blunt, expressing his regret over Japan's complaint to the World Trade Organization on Korea's import ban of Japanese marine products. Experts say this issue could create problems down the line.
Japan has to revive the economy in regions affected by the nuclear disaster. One of its new growth strategies is to expand its marine exports. But as there are even some Japanese avoiding locally caught fish, from Korea's stance, it's going to be difficult to liberalize imports.
And that could affect possible free trade deals under discussion, such as the Korea-Japan FTA, Korea-China-Japan FTA, or comprehensive trade paths like the RCEP and TPP. 권소아, Arirang News.
At least 1,000 people have died in an intense heat wave in India, which has seen temperatures hit almost 48 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country. Hospitals have been overflowing with people suffering heat stroke and dehydration. Authorities are advising people to stay indoors whenever possible, especially during the peak hours of the afternoon, the hottest time of the day. And making matters worse, there appears no end in sight to the searing conditions. India's weather agency says temperatures in several states are forecast to top 45 degrees Celsius over the next few days. There are also concerns the intensely hot and dry conditions could push the worst affected states into drought before monsoon rains arrive next month. Well, that's all we have for now. Thanks as always for tuning in, and we hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.